What would you do if the enemy handed you soap? Not as a joke, not as humiliation, just soap. A bar of soap and a clean towel. You've been a prisoner for 3 days. You haven't bathed in weeks. You smell like fear and dirt and dried sweat. You're wearing the same clothes you were captured in, stiff with mud and blood. You're a woman surrounded by enemy soldiers. You've been told your entire life what happens to women captured by this enemy. And then a soldier walks up and hands you soap, clean soap that smells like something normal, like something from the world before the war. What do? Do you take it? Do you trust it? Or do you wait for the trap to spring? Because in 1945, thousands of women faced exactly this moment. They were prisoners of war, nurses, resistance fighters, support staff, captured by American forces as Germany collapsed. They expected the worst. They'd been trained to expect the worst. Instead, they got soap. And that bar of soap, that simple gesture of letting them wash themselves, broke through their propaganda-built walls faster than any interrogation ever could. This is the story of how soap became a weapon, how dignity defeated fear, and why the smallest acts of respect sometimes matter more than grand gestures. The choice between treating prisoners as humans or as objects determined not just who survived, but who switched sides. And what happened when American soldiers handed enemy women soap still teaches us about power, dignity, and what it means to see humanity in your enemy. March 1945. A makeshift prisoner holding area in Western Germany. About 60 women sit in a large room that used to be a school gymnasium. They're a mixed group. German military nurses, civilian volunteers who worked for the army, a few resistance fighters from occupied countries who'd been imprisoned by Germany and then liberated by American forces only to be detained for processing. They've been here for 2 days. Nobody has told them what will happen next. The room is crowded. There's one bathroom for 60 women. The guards are American soldiers who stand outside the doors. The women are scared. Not just scared of what might happen. Scared of what definitely will happen based on everything they've been told. One woman, her name is Helga, she's 26 years old, worked as a communications clerk for the German army. She's sitting against the wall trying to make herself invisible. She hasn't washed since before she was captured 4 days ago. She can smell herself. Everyone can smell everyone. 60 unwashed women in close quarters creates an odor that's hard to ignore. But asking to wash seems dangerous. Asking for anything seems dangerous. In propaganda films and radio broadcasts, they've heard what happens to women prisoners. The stories are specific and horrifying. So the women sit, they wait. They try not to draw attention. They whisper to each other when guards aren't looking. They share the same fears without speaking them aloud. Then something happens that nobody expects. An American officer enters the gym. He's accompanied by a translator, a German-American soldier who speaks both languages fluently. The officer speaks, the translator interprets. You will be processed today. First, you will wash. We have soap and towels. You will shower in groups of 10. The showers are supervised by female personnel only. No male soldiers will be present. You will receive clean clothes after showering. Your belongings will be held and returned to you when you're released. The women look at each other. Is this the trap? The officer continues. I understand you're frightened. I understand you've been told things about how we treat prisoners. I'm telling you the truth. You will be treated according to Geneva Convention standards. That means adequate food, shelter, medical care, and basic hygiene. We follow these rules. Always. That word again. Always. Not when convenient. Not when we feel like it. Always. But the women don't believe him. How can they? The translator asks if anyone has questions. Silence. Then Helga, surprising herself, raises her hand. The soap, she says quietly. Is it real soap? The translator looks confused. Yes, it's real soap. Why would it not be real? Helga doesn't know how to explain. In Germany, real soap has been scarce for 2 years. People make soap from whatever they can find. It barely lathers. It smells terrible. Real soap, the kind that smells clean and lathers properly, is a luxury that disappeared long ago. The idea that prisoners would get real soap when German civilians can't get real soap makes no sense. The officer understands the question without needing explanation. "It's American military soap," he says through the translator. "The same soap our soldiers use. It's real. You'll see." 10 women are called first. Helga is among them. They're led down a hallway by a female soldier, a WAC, Women's Army Corps member, who doesn't speak German but gestures clearly. The shower room is tiled and clean. There are 10 shower heads, dividers between them for privacy. On a bench sit stacks of towels, white, clean, folded towels, and bars of wrapped soap. The WAC demonstrates: unwrap soap, turn on water, wash, dry with towel. Then she leaves. The women stand there. Is this when it happens? Is this when men burst in? But nothing happens. The door is closed. They're alone. Slowly, one woman starts undressing, then another. Soon all 10 are standing under shower heads, turning on water that runs hot. Hot water, another impossible luxury. And unwrapping soap that smells like nothing they've experienced in years. It smells clean, simple, normal. Helga stands under hot water with soap in her hands and starts crying. Not from fear. From the overwhelming cognitive dissonance of expecting horror and receiving basic human dignity. The soap lathers. The smell of clean fills the room. For 5 minutes, these 10 women are not prisoners. They're just women taking showers, something so normal and mundane that its very normalcy is shocking. When they finish, they dry with clean towels and are given simple dresses. Not military uniforms, just plain civilian dresses, clean and whole. They're led back to the gymnasium. The other women stare at them. They look different, not just clean. The terror in their faces has shifted to confusion. The next group of 10 is called. This process repeats until all 60 women have showered. That night, lying on cots that have been brought in, actual cots with thin mattresses, not just floors, the women whisper to each other. The soap becomes the center of conversation, not because soap is miraculous, but because soap is normal. It's what you give people when you see them as humans who deserve basic dignity. You don't give soap to people you're planning to torture. You don't provide hot showers and privacy to people you see as objects. The soap and towels are proof, small but undeniable proof, that maybe, possibly, the propaganda was wrong. Maybe Americans don't treat prisoners the way they've been told. This realization doesn't come all at once. It's too big, too threatening to worldviews built over years. But it starts with soap. Over the next days and weeks, other small dignities pile up. The food is adequate, not fancy, but sufficient. There's bread, canned meat, coffee, more food than many women have seen in months of rationing in Germany. There's a medic who checks everyone for illness and injury. One woman has an infected wound. The medic treats it with real antibiotics, drugs that are so scarce in Germany that civilians almost never get them. There are sanitary supplies for women's periods, pads and products that have been nearly impossible to get in Germany for years. The female guards are professional but not cruel. They enforce rules but don't humiliate. This steady accumulation of basic decency erodes the propaganda structure these women have been taught. Here's what the soap represents that goes deeper than just cleanliness. When you deny someone the ability to wash, you're sending a message. You're not fully human. Humans wash. Animals don't care. By giving women soap and privacy to clean themselves, American forces were sending the opposite message. You're human. You have dignity. We recognize that. This matters more than it seems at first. In concentration camps, Nazis deliberately denied prisoners the ability to wash as part of dehumanization. In many POW camps, soap was withheld or severely rationed as punishment. The Americans did the opposite. They provided soap immediately before processing was even complete. This wasn't an earned privilege. This was a right recognized from the moment of capture. Think about what this does psychologically. You've been told Americans are monsters. You're captured. You expect abuse. Instead, Within 24 hours, you're offered soap, hot water, clean towels, and privacy. Every single one of these things contradicts what you've been taught. You can't easily reconcile it. Some women tried. They told themselves it was temporary, that Americans were being nice now, but cruelty would come later. But days passed, then weeks. The basic decency continued. No sudden turn to cruelty, just consistent treatment according to rules. Slowly, inevitably, the women had to confront the possibility that they'd been lied to about everything. Let me share a detail that appears in multiple accounts from women prisoners: the smell of the soap. Several women describe remembering the specific smell of American military soap, a clean, slightly antiseptic smell. Nothing fancy, but distinctly soap-like. In their testimonials years later, they mention this smell as the moment they first questioned their propaganda training. One woman, interviewed in the 1980s, said, "When I smelled that soap, real soap, I thought, people who give this to prisoners are not the monsters we were told about. Monsters don't care if you smell good." It's a simple observation, but it captures something profound about how we recognize humanity in others. The small considerations, soap, hot water, privacy, signal that someone sees you as a person worthy of dignity. Now let's talk about what didn't happen, because what didn't happen matters as much as what did. American soldiers had every reason to treat German prisoners badly. Germany had started the war. German forces had committed atrocities across Europe. German propaganda had portrayed Americans as subhuman. American soldiers had lost friends to German bullets and bombs. The emotional pull toward revenge was strong. Some American soldiers did act on that pull. There are documented cases of abuse, of rules being broken, of prisoners being mistreated. But these were violations of policy, not policy itself. When discovered, they were punished. The official policy: provide soap, food, medical care, basic dignity, was enforced with remarkable consistency. This enforcement came from the top. General Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, made clear that Geneva Convention rules would be followed. Officers who allowed abuse of prisoners faced consequences. This discipline came from strategic thinking, not pure morality. Leaders understood that well-treated prisoners became sources of intelligence, that prisoners who were treated well spread word to soldiers still fighting, encouraging surrender, that how you treat defeated enemies determines whether they become future allies or future threats. The soap wasn't just soap. It was strategy disguised as decency. Or maybe it was decency that happened to be strategic. Both things can be true simultaneously. Compare this to how female prisoners were treated in other contexts. Soviet forces advancing through Germany allowed widespread assault of German women, soldiers, civilians, prisoners. Japanese forces in China treated female prisoners with systematic brutality. German forces in occupied territories showed no mercy to female resistance fighters or partisans. The pattern was consistent. When rules don't exist or aren't enforced, prisoners, especially female prisoners, suffer terribly. The American insistence on rules, on soap and towels and privacy, was the exception, not the norm. That exception saved thousands of women from trauma beyond capture itself. Here's a question I want you to think about. And I'm genuinely curious about your answer because there's no obviously right response. If you were an American soldier in 1945, would you want to give soap to enemy women who worked for a regime that killed your friends? Would you see it as weakness, as treating people who don't deserve kindness? Or would you see it as strength, as refusing to lower yourself to the enemy's standards? Drop your honest reaction in the comments, because I think how people answer this reveals a lot about different approaches to conflict and humanity. There's no wrong answer here. I just want to understand how different people think about this moral question. The soap did something else that American commanders probably didn't fully anticipate. It created a class of witnesses who would return to German society with stories that contradicted Nazi propaganda. When these women were eventually processed and released, most within weeks or months as the war ended, They went back to German towns and cities. They told their families and friends, Americans treated us well. They gave us soap and food. They followed rules. Nobody assaulted us. Nobody tortured us. These testimonials spread. They couldn't be easily dismissed because they came from women who'd actually been prisoners, not from Allied propaganda. A woman telling her sister, the Americans gave me soap and let me shower in privacy, is more credible than a government announcement. This witness effect accelerated the post-war acceptance of American occupation. German civilians, especially women, were less afraid of American soldiers because prisoners had come home with stories of decent treatment. This made the occupation more stable. It reduced resistance. It opened the possibility of cooperation, all because someone decided that prisoners should get soap. The strategic value of that decision, measured in reduced conflict, faster stabilization, easier transition to peace, probably exceeded the cost of the soap by orders of magnitude. But you have to think long-term to see it. In the moment, giving soap to enemy prisoners seems like wasting resources on people who don't deserve them. Over years, it's revealed as brilliant strategy. Let's return to Helga one more time. She spent 3 weeks in American custody. During that time, she was interrogated. Americans wanted information about German military communications. The interrogation was professional. No torture, no threats, just questions. She answered some, refused to answer others. The interrogators accepted her refusals without punishment. She was fed regularly. She could shower weekly. She received mail from her family. American forces helped locate them and facilitated letters. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, she was released. She returned to her family in a small town that was now in the American occupation zone. Her first conversation with her mother included describing how Americans had treated her. Her mother was shocked. She'd been terrified for Helga, expecting the worst. Hearing that Helga had been given soap and treated with basic dignity didn't erase the pain of war, but it meant her daughter hadn't suffered what she'd feared most. Years later, Helga told her story to a researcher documenting POW experiences. She was asked what moment she remembers most vividly. Not capture, not interrogation. Not release, the soap. Standing under hot water with real soap, realizing that her captors saw her as human. That moment, she said, changed how she understood the war. Not the politics, not the strategy. Just the basic recognition that enemies could treat each other with dignity. That this was possible. That rules could matter even in the worst circumstances. She carried that lesson the rest of her life. The pattern repeated across thousands of women in American custody. German nurses, French resistance fighters who'd been imprisoned by Germans, Dutch women who'd worked for the underground, Belgian civilians caught in combat zones, Italian partisans, women from a dozen countries, captured or liberated by American forces, processed through the same system. Soap, food, medical care, basic dignity. The consistency mattered. If it had been random, some women treated well, others treated badly, it could be dismissed as luck. But the systematic nature of decent treatment showed it was policy, not accident. American forces were following rules deliberately. Now here's an uncomfortable question that we have to address. Were these women prisoners or were they liberated? The answer is, sometimes both. Some women were German military personnel who were genuinely enemy prisoners. Others were resistance fighters from Allied countries who'd been imprisoned by Germany, then liberated by Americans but held for security processing because nobody knew initially who was who. The soap didn't distinguish. Clean towels were provided to German nurses and French resistance fighters alike. This universality reinforced the message. Basic human dignity isn't conditional on whose side you're on. It's universal. This principle, human rights are universal, not contingent on whether someone is friend or enemy, became a cornerstone of post-war international law. The Geneva Conventions expanded. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted. These legal frameworks said certain things are wrong to do to anyone, enemy or not. The soap was practical application of this principle before the principle was fully articulated. I want to pause here and ask you to do something. Think about the last time you dehumanized someone. Maybe not consciously, maybe just in your head. Someone who cut you off in traffic, you thought, what an idiot. Someone with different political views, you thought, they're crazy or evil. Someone from a different group, you made an assumption about what they're like. We all do this. It's human nature to sort people into us and them, to see them as less human than us. Now imagine meeting that person and discovering they're just a normal human with fears and hopes and problems like you. That moment of recognition, oh, they're human too, is what the soap created for these women. They expected monsters. They got people who followed rules, who provided basic care, who saw them as humans. That recognition forced them to see their captors as human too, which made future cooperation possible. The soap strategy didn't work on everyone. Some women remained convinced that American kindness was temporary or strategic manipulation. Some never forgave Americans for the bombing campaigns that destroyed German cities. Some held onto Nazi ideology despite evidence that contradicted it. Propaganda is powerful. It doesn't break easily. But even for women who remained ideologically opposed to America, the memory of being treated with basic dignity complicated their hatred. It's harder to fully dehumanize someone who gave you soap when you needed it. This complication, this small crack in absolute enmity, is enough to make future peace possible. Here's what connects to your life right now, today, in ways that matter. How often do you have the chance to treat someone with dignity when you could treat them badly instead? Someone who wronged you, someone from a them group, someone you have power over. Do you use that power to humiliate? Or do you maintain their dignity even when you don't have to? The soap test is simple. When you have an enemy at your mercy, do you give them soap? This metaphor extends to every power imbalance. Boss and employee, parent and child, teacher and student, strong and weak. The person with power can always choose humiliation or dignity. Which choice you make reveals who you are more than anything you say about your values. The women who received soap from American soldiers carried that memory forward. Some became advocates for reconciliation. Some raised children in post-war Germany, teaching them that enemies can treat each other with respect. Some worked to strengthen Geneva Convention protections. Some simply lived their lives, but with the knowledge that humanity can persist even in war. That knowledge spread. It shaped post-war German society's willingness to become American allies. It influenced how Germany rebuilt as a democracy that respected human rights. The soap was a small gesture. Its ripples were enormous. 2 more stories are waiting on your screen right now. One about male POWs who had a similar experience discovering that propaganda lied about enemy treatment. One about what happens when prisoners don't receive basic dignity and how that creates generational cycles of revenge. Watch both of them. Compare the outcomes. Think about which world you'd rather live in. One where we give enemies soap, or one where we don't. Because that choice determines whether wars end with reconciliation or with festering hatred that explodes into the next conflict. Thanks for watching this far and for thinking about hard questions that don't have easy answers. The fact that you're still here means you're willing to consider that kindness isn't weakness, that dignity isn't a luxury you give only to friends, and that how we treat enemies defines us more than how we treat allies. If this story made you think differently about power, dignity, or how small gestures reveal character, hit that like button. Your engagement literally determines whether other people find these stories that challenge conventional thinking about conflict and humanity. Subscribe if you want more history that reveals uncomfortable truths about human nature and shows that our choices, treating people with dignity or treating them as objects, echo across generations. The algorithm shows these videos to people who engage, so your comment or like helps someone else discover that maybe the way we've been taught to think about enemies isn't the only way or the best way. See you in the next one, where we'll explore more moments where small choices about human dignity determine the course of history.